Hi there, everyone. Welcome to our Tapping into the Power of Communities uh, webinar today. Apologies that we're a couple of minutes late coming into this. We just had, as usual, a couple of little technical teething problems that always happen when you try and do anything online. My name is Ben. I'm the marketing manager of Resource Futures. I'm going to just be comparing today's session and running the Q&A. Just as we're waiting for everybody to join in, I'll give you a little bit of groundwork on what we're going to be doing today. So we've got a really great lineup of different people who are going to be talking about community action and how we can bring that about in different areas, and talking about the CAG networks, specifically CAG Devon, that we run at Resource Futures. Throughout, there will be the opportunity to contribute to our Q&A. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please drop them in the Q&A section, and then we will bring those up at the end and we will ask our panel. We're also going to pop a couple of questions into the chat as we go along. Please do engage with these, and then afterwards we will send everybody the findings of those so we can all share them. Without further ado, I just want to talk a little bit about our upcoming events. So this is one of a series of 4 webinars that we're hosting. So we had one about food collections and simpler recycling in December. This one, obviously, today is about tapping into the power of communities. Next month, on Wednesday, the 12th of February, we have one about boosting electrical reuse, repair and recycling. And there we'll be talking about our Fixie project that's been roaming around the streets of Somerset over the last couple of years. So that's definitely one to come along if you're looking to find out more about electrical recycling and how we can use that in communities. And then on Wednesday, the 5th of March, our director, Gwen Frost, is going to be talking about how data can be used to help us understand our waste and kind of help improve collections and bits and pieces like that. So a little bit about us at Resource Futures. So we were founded in 2006 when 3 companies in the waste and resources sector came together, and we're founded around the idea of regenerative thinking and collaborative action being good for business, society and the planet, and that these ideas aren't an obstacle to a positive future, but actually that they are the key to it. And that really comes into the people that we've brought into our company. So we're a multidisciplinary collection of experts. So we range from waste composition analysts to policy experts to our community specialists who are talking today. And then the areas that we work across, if we could have the next slide, are communities, consultancy and data. So we work with governments, so that's national governments, local councils, international governmental bodies, businesses of all kinds, from SMEs up to large multinationals working on different areas, NGOs, non-profits, and of course, community groups. And our main ambition is to embrace regenerative change and help people rebalance their relationship with resources. So, so that you don't have to listen to me blather on too much, I will introduce our wonderful speakers. So we have Charlie Edisford, who is our communities lead at Resource Futures. She will be taking the lead in the presentation today. Joining her is Helen Vines, who is our CAG Devon project lead. And we also have Bobby Hughes, who is the Senior Waste Management Officer at Devon County Council. And she will be giving us a council perspective on this. We also hope to have Jenny Fulton-Price joining us from Ulfcombe Green Team. We'll have to see on that. If not, we will still be able to share all of the information, but we're hoping to get her on at a later date during this webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to let Charlie crack on, and we will be back at the end. So any questions that you have during the session, please do pop that into the Q&A, and we will have a little 5-10 minutes at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, thank you for joining. We'll be talking a bit today about the CAG network model, but also about the power of community action. And so what I thought it would be good just to start off with is a bit of reflection from yourselves. So I know there's quite a range of different organisations in the room today, and community groups. So we've got community groups, local authorities, and also local organisations. So initially, if we could all just take a minute to think about what is our vision for the future, what change we'd need to see in our community to make that happen. And that could be your local community, a community you work with, or it could be your county. So if you just take a moment to just drop that into the chat, and just kind of have a think about what kind of change you might want to see. And then we'll just review and gather that later and we can kind of share those comments. So Ben's popped that into the chat. So by all means, add your thoughts for what change you might want to see within your community. Okay. So we're talking about community action. I thought it'd just be good to take a moment to think about what community action is. So there's obviously lots of different definitions of it, and I've just popped on there the Oxford Dictionary definition, that of our CAG project manager, Helen, and also Jenny from Ufcombe Green team. But common threads across all of those really is that idea of people, individuals, communities coming together, uniting, working together, and working together for a common goal. But it's, I guess, not always that the goal could be something external. It could be driving something within the community. Obviously, a lot of what we're talking about might be motivated also around climate issues. But I think, Jenny's kind of definition picks up that also the motivation might be that connection in and of itself. So just having that connection with others as well. So I guess thinking back to your reflections on what change you might want to see within your community, then it's thinking, how can community action help us to achieve that change? So by its very nature, community action is led by the communities that it serves. So that might be a community of place, it might be a community of interest, but that means that the people driving are gonna have a very good understanding of what the local needs are. And I think that kind of links in really with the next kind of point there, which is that it's really grassroots change. So it's really bottom up, which means that the change can be really impactful, but also long lasting. And then I think that I'd added on here kind of knowledge and innovation, because I never really cease to be amazed by the level of expertise within the community action groups in our networks. Had a conversation with someone the other day, and they're a CAG member, and their group is currently working with the local water board to trial carbon capture in rivers. So there's a huge amount of knowledge, skills, and expertise within the networks that are coming out with kind of really innovative solutions. And the fact that those knowledge and kind of ideas are coming from community members means that they're coming from trusted voices. So it's kind of thinking who is it that you trust, and whose voice guides you. So is that local government? Is it local organisations, trusted organisations? Is it neighbours? Is it friends? So having those kind of messages and behaviours being influenced by people that are embedded in the community is incredibly impactful. But in addition to changing behaviours, these types of community action projects are also changing lives. We're creating local community assets, such as community fridges or repair cafes or a whole host of other things. What we often say in our communities team is that no one's hard to reach, services are hard to access. So by having those kinds of things embedded within local communities means that they're really accessible, really easy for people to engage. And within all of that, through the connecting, through the developing of these services, what we're also doing really through this is building resilience, which is hugely positive for the communities now, but also is going to be, incredibly valuable in the years to come. And within that, at the heart of this, is that kind of ripple effect, really. that the projects are having a real impact on sustainability, on regenerative practices, but also on on kind of well-being and having a really holistic impact. And I've just added in this quote from Rob Hopkins. So if we wait for governments, then it will be too late. If we act as individuals, it will be too little. But if we act as communities, it might be just enough and it might be just in time. And I think that kind of sums it up quite nicely in terms of that power of invested really in community action. So how do we support that to happen? How can we create the conditions within our communities for these types of activities to happen? And, you know, we think one of the most important things initially really is that listening process to really understand what's happening locally. And that's relevant if you're a community group or a group of people coming together to set up your first initiative, or a local authority wanting to set up a new community action group network. It's really understanding what is already happening, what groups are active, what support is already out there, and really just taking the time to listen and to understand. And when we set up new projects within Resource Futures, we do that within a formalized kind of research process of doing interviews, of having focus groups, doing a survey. But yeah, you can do that in a lo-fi way as well, of just having those conversations, mapping out what's going on, and just kind of building those links. And so, yeah, we've put there kind of time is essential. And that is whether you're doing that initial mapping process or actually starting to kind of influence more community action group action happening. So in the early days of the Community Action Group Network in Devon, we worked very intensively in Mid Devon, and we're doing that at the moment in East Devon as well. So that might involve going along to meetings early on in a group's journey, just doing a little bit more hand-holding to get more action happening. So yeah, by understanding what's going on in your local area, you'll also understand what the challenges are. And by doing that, and that means if you're setting up a new community action group activity, you can obviously help, hopefully, to avoid some of those challenges. And if you're setting up a network, you can tailor it to support those kind of barriers and overcome them. And kind of through that process of listening and understanding, can make sure that you're not duplicating anything that's already happening locally, not replicating anything, but also that process helps to build the foundations, to build the trust early on for new community group activity or new community network activity. And so we've kind of obviously talked a little bit about that idea of really empowering your community, but it's really about that transfer of power, ensuring that your approach is inclusive, to make sure that the communities are able to take the lead. And then the final thing I've noted here is that kind of idea of radical collaboration. So Truan from Hubbub spoke at one of our early CAG Somerset events, and he talked a lot about this idea of radical collaboration, which we really liked. And underpinning that really is setting aside egos and competition, working very collaboratively towards your goals. And that's really at a localized level within the kind of community action group sector, making sure that we're collaborating and sharing, but also kind of at a more strategic and organizational level, always working together and finding ways to create more innovative partnerships to achieve your goals. And I just included this slide because this is some findings from the research that we did in Devon when we expanded beyond Mid Devon into the whole county. And this was the feedback we received through surveys and interviews about the needs of groups in the wider Devon area where we hadn't already got a CAG network running. And these will probably be echoed across a variety of different places and spaces, because community action groups are fantastic, and you'll hear a lot today about the power of them, but also often they are led exclusively by volunteers, and that can be tiring and demanding, and it comes with challenges. So with the kind of lack of funding being one of the greatest ones, which links into capacity and everything else, But yeah, I think 60% of people that responded from our survey said that yeah, they could do with help with funding and fundraising, and kind of rising costs. Then really it's about volunteering and having enough capacity to deliver their activities. And linked to that really is that idea of a kind of volunteer taking on board and starting an activity and then maybe not having enough support to continue it and leading to burnout. Some groups feeling a bit more isolated from other groups, so the need for kind of networking and sharing, and the desire to reach new audiences and get to help to do that. So really understanding these needs helps us, and you'll hear from Helen next how we try to kind of shape our networks to respond to those needs. And then final one from me was just really kind of a snapshot of the evolution of the networks of CAG. So Resource Futures, as you've heard, has been the coming together of three organisations, and we've always had a heart in the kind of community space, and it's always been very kind of core to what we do. Community action was very much what we were doing right at the beginning of Resource Futures, and that led to the formalising of the CAG network support model, so a network of support for community action groups, working very closely with Oxfordshire County Council in 2001. And then in 2016, we started to work more intensively in Mid Devon, set up the CAG Devon network in Mid Devon. And then 2 years later, we supported CAG Oxfordshire. So it'd been running almost for 20 years then, to set up as its own self-governing entity. So that is now separate to us, but still linked to us. And then in 2023, we carried out more research in Somerset to understand what the needs of the county were, and established a network in Somerset. And then not long after that, we expanded across the whole of the county in Devon after some more foundational research. And that is the network that we'll hear about next. So I've noted here that the networks initially were focused on reuse, repair and waste reduction. But as they've evolved, all of them, including Somerset most recently, have widened their remit into kind of sustainability and regenerative practices, acknowledging the kind of really holistic approach of community action. And it's really guided by what our groups want to do. So without further ado, I will hand over to Helen to tell us a little bit more about the network in Devon and how that works.
Thanks, Charlie. Hi, everyone. Great to have everybody here for this lunchtime webinar. I'm just going to talk briefly, though it's quite tricky because there's 8 years plus of fantastic activity that's been going on across the CAG Devon network. But I'll aim to give you a snapshot in just a few minutes. So CAG networks provide advice and support to groups, local grassroots groups taking action to build climate resilient communities. And we do that in a variety of ways, which I will explain in a little bit more. But there's just a little bit of a flavour of some of the things that we get involved in delivering. Next slide, please. Lovely. And it's very much our philosophy and belief, largely because our groups demonstrate this to us every day, that when communities come together, great things happen. And here's just a flavour of the types of activities that our groups across our network get engaged in. And I would say that every group is unique in what they do. Some just focus on one particular activity, such as a repair cafe, others just a community fridge, and some groups engage in both of those plus a bunch of other things as well. There is no one particular model for a CAG group, and we're certainly not prescriptive about what that should be, apart from the fact that it's got open democratic membership. Anybody can join if they agree and support the objectives of the group and want to do good stuff in their communities. Next slide, please. Fantastic. So this is just a very quick snapshot of where we are at the moment. There's one or two little icons missing off that community map. You can find this on our website. If you want to have a look more, it's an interactive map. So, and the different icons represent different types of activities. So it's easy for you to find all the repair cafes within the CAG network, or community fridges, people that are doing tree planting or whatever, wildlife festivals or whatever it may be. So that's a really helpful resource, and it helps to do one of the key things that our network is about, which is around connecting and connecting groups across the county with similar interests, but also connecting people that aren't within the CAG network also to what's going on within the network as well. So that's a really fantastic resource. At the moment, we've got 51 core members as groups. Membership is free. And we're also working up a kind of affiliate stroke partner member category, as there are lots of other organisations across Devon that are interested in being part of a CAG network and connected to us in some way, that don't fit the grassroots core group, but they're still doing fantastic stuff. So we want to be working with them and supporting them however we can. So that's work in progress. There's a very small core team, myself and Molly, who's in her second week and is at this event as well. And then we've got, as Charlie's already mentioned, an East Devon coordinator, Sarah, who's being employed and funded through East Devon District Council for 12-month project initially. We're hoping that will continue, but watch this space. And in thinking about what we do as an offer, as a network, we kind of came up with, actually, it all comes down to, well, it doesn't just all come down to, these three elements: supporting, connecting, and inspiring. And that shapes a lot of our work. Next slide, please. So in terms of supporting our members, we deliver a lot of training. That sounds quite formal, and most of it isn't. So Molly or myself might go out to a group and do social media one-to-one, so helping groups get their heads around Instagram if they haven't done that before, putting together basic reels, content and things like that, just so that they can get the word out themselves in their local communities about what they're doing and potentially attract new members. First aid, well, I'll let you read these for yourselves, but basically the training that we put on reflects what our members have asked for. And every year we put out a group survey to all our members and to all the volunteers within those groups, asking them what would be useful training for them to help them achieve what they want to achieve. And then we will put those courses on in different parts of the county or online for them. And they're very popular and yeah, usually great fun. We also provide a lot of resources, and this is one of the things that groups say that they really value. So policy templates, basic constitution, health and safety templates, safeguarding, privacy, all of those sorts of things. Not that people will just lift and stick their own name on the top and that's it, but it's always easier to start from something rather than a blank piece of paper. So it's basically trying to enable them to have good governance in place and all the policies to enable them to work safely, as professionally, in inverted commas. And if we can help them do that without taking up too much time, that focuses them to do the things that they want to be doing, whether it be tree planting or running a community fridge or all of those other things. So we also have a number of how-to guides. There's no point in reinventing the wheel, and that's certainly one of the things that we're really keen to push out. So also on our website, you'll find how-to guides on creating libraries of things, community fridges, repair cafes, and so on. We run a small grant scheme for our groups. And we also advocate for our members in other forums and networks. So increasingly people are coming to us because we have a voice for our members. We don't claim to speak for everybody, but it enables, it kind of aggregates their voice collectively if we can speak for them. So yeah. I'm just going to move on. Just conscious of time. Lovely.
Yes, I'm back in.
So just connecting, we run events, which are also inspirational events. We're very much don't reinvent the wheel.
As far as I can tell.
Don't be reinventing the wheel. So we try and connect groups. If there's somebody that wants to set up a repair cafe, we'll always be saying, go and talk to Chudfix, go and see Tiverton Repair Cafe, go to Uffcombe Green Team, see how 2 or 3 other groups are running theirs, take the ideas you like, and then then we can help you, as Charlie said, come along, handhold at some meetings and help you get off the ground. So very much about connecting, and also collaborate events. We run them online and face to face. So last night we were running an event around volunteer recruitment. The week before we were running one in partnership with CAG Devon around community composting. And we've run them on all sorts of events in response to what our members say that they're interested in hearing about. Really important. So we have people in Ilfracombe talking to people in South Devon that have said without being part of CAG Devon, they wouldn't have had a clue that the other group existed. So that's a real positive for me. We also connect through our newsletter, and we've got an online CAG Devon Repair Cafe Collaborate page where any repair cafe can come in, ask questions of other repair cafes about an issue around a repair cafe, rather than having to direct those inquiries through the core team, so they can talk directly. Next slide, please. Inspiring. This is one of the lovely bits of our job. We get to go every day. Well, we don't get to go every day, but every day we get to be inspired by what groups are doing, and we try and pick up and share those stories, pull together case studies, videos, short reels to share what other people are doing. We have Skillshare event. It's our big kind of annual gathering every year where we have 80 to 90 people come together from across the county, share inspiration, best practice, just network, eat good food together, and just be inspired, recharged and invigorated, looking for the positives and the positive tipping points. So that's a really big part of our role. We also are planning more project visits where we can go and be inspired, not just online or in a meeting space, but actually on the ground, meeting and visiting other projects and seeing how they do things. So that's fantastic as well. And there was a lovely example last year of somebody talking at the Skillshare about a wildlife nature competition that they had run. It was a 10-minute talk that Lucy did on this, and then by the following year we know of at least 3 other CAG groups that had picked up and run with that idea and done one in their own community, including Uffcombe Green Team. Turn the Tide in Dawlish, where that exhibition has now ended up in the library. So it's prompting new conversations, reaching new audiences for people to get involved in thinking about what can they be doing in their own communities. Fantastic stuff. Next slide, please. I'm really rattling through these. So as part of our work, we also feel it's really important to be capturing some of the impact of what the groups are doing. We need to make it easy and meaningful for those groups. So we share good ideas about how they can be doing that. We capture a mix of the numerical data, the kind of outputs that we deliver, but also help them to capture the outputs that they're delivering, but also very equally importantly, the kind of social impact and the environmental impact of the work that they're doing and the effort that they're putting in. We've got a lovely section of stories on our website, which was done a couple of years ago now, and that kind of focuses on different volunteers and their motivations for volunteering and some of the impacts for them. And I encourage you to go to our website and have a look under the impact section and read those. They're very powerful. I'm going to go on to the next one. So we also use a software package which Resource Futures developed a number of years ago called Resource CIT, which stands for Community Impact Tracker. And we've worked with our groups, and many of our groups now have their own account. They capture the data of the activities that they're doing, they input it into the system, and they can see through the year the impact that they are making, including in terms of volunteer hours, which is great for when you're putting in funding applications, but also things like carbon emissions avoided, tons of waste diverted from landfill, tons of waste prevented per year. And just to say, last year, then we produce an infographic, as you can see there, of the key headline outcomes. So last year, our groups amongst themselves helped prevent 110 tonnes of waste. That's through litter picks and repair cafe activity, and helped avoid 361 tonnes of carbon emissions. So I think that's fantastic, and it's brilliant to be able to, again, aggregate the work of those individual groups across the county into something that's, you know, quite substantial. I've just got this last one slide to say. We use the infographics to demonstrate, as it said, environmental impact, social impact. We also ask our volunteers how it's been for them as volunteers, and this is what they said. These are the key headlines from the volunteer survey from last year. So 76% felt better connected to their communities. They've enjoyed themselves. They've met new friends. And actually, I was talking to somebody last week, and they were saying, actually, by volunteering, one particular lady had also met old school friends that she'd lost touch with over several decades. So you can make new friends and hook up with old friends as well. 36% felt more confident talking about an environmental issue. Brilliant. And 22% have eaten more cake. Cake is very important within the CAG Devon network. I don't need to say any more about that. But these outcomes link directly to the lovely 5 ways of wellbeing, which Bobby's going to pick up on a little bit more in her talk. So so much great stuff going on in the CAG Devon network. I just want to finish with a lovely quote and leave you with this. That was from one of our volunteers, and it came back from our volunteer survey last year. So fantastic. That's me done.
Great, thank you, Helen. So I believe we do have Jenny with us after a couple of technical issues. So we're just going to add Jenny in and make sure that it's working for her. So Jenny, you're muted at the moment. So we need to try and unmute you. To the top right-hand corner, there's a little microphone button.
Okay, I think I've got it.
Yes, we've got you. Perfect. Thank you, Jenny. So yes, I will let Jenny talk you through the Ofcom Green Team section in a moment. We've had a couple of bits come through just while we've been talking. Anyone who's missed the start, we are recording this, so you'll have the full recording sent to you. We will also be sending a bunch of helpful links. So I know Rachel Hibbert, you asked for the link to the website. We will send that to you after the webinar. There is a bit for people to drop questions in. I've seen we've had a couple in already, so please do add those for the Q&A at the end. And we're just going to pop another question in as well for people to answer. So have a look at the Q&A section for all of those. Cool. Thank you, Jenny. On to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. Hello, everybody, and I am Jenny from Ofcom Green Team. I'm just going to do a really quick gallop through some of what we get up to, and wanted to also just reinforce some of the benefits of being part of the network at CAG Devon. So just first of all, the origins of our Green Team probably lie back in 2014. There were things happening in our parish even before then, sort of isolated pockets of activity, litter picking, tree planting, community composting project, and attempts to set up a community energy scheme. And we had close links with what was then Sustainable Villages, which is now Sustainable Tiverton. This slide is the poster from the very first Ofcom Green Day, which happened in 2014. It was largely the initiative of a very committed individual who gathered together like-minded people and put on this very first Ofcom Green Day. So it was the catalyst, really, for bringing those scattered, isolated activities together under one Green Team umbrella. Last year, 2024, it was our celebration event of 10 years since that first Ufcombe Green Day. And for that celebration day, we created a timeline of everything that had gone on in the previous decade. We plotted the events, the activities, the development of different projects. The resulting timeline stretched over 2 meters of wallpaper lining paper, so I can't possibly summarize that in my few minutes. But over this last decade, our organization has developed and consolidated a number of core projects. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this gives an idea of these are our core projects at the moment. You can see we've got a community fridge and larder. And our primary aim is to save surplus food from going to waste. But in doing that, we do also support some households who just need a bit of extra. So we have a monthly, 6-weekly repair cafe. We have a warm space. That initiative started during the energy price increases. So that was coming up for 3 years ago. And we continue with warm space because it's been so popular. We link in with Community Energy Group, who come and give home energy advice, who give out all kinds of warm giveaways, who did home visits a couple of years ago, some of the people who were involved with warm space. Litter picking continues. We also have there at the bottom, you can see ponderers and wildflower warriors. On behalf of the parish council, we manage our village pond in a wildlife friendly way, and we're also trying to maintain some wildflower areas along the edge of part of the main road. We were also linked into Surfers Against Sewage, single-use plastic free, and we got that award several years ago and continue that work. And we have a very active wildlife group which monitors, records nature, organises activities, bat watches, and moth surveys, and all sorts of things like that. So we've now got more than 65 volunteers. Some are regulars in roles that they might get involved every week. Some people indeed every day. Some occasionally dip in, filling gaps, or joining in just with an occasional activity. And a lot of people help in more than one of our projects. And we're really pleased with the number of committed volunteers we've got. We're a relatively small rural community of around 3,000 people, and there are plenty of other groups and organisations in the parish that also have a call on people's time and energy. So it feels particularly important that people do commit to Green Team activities. We've got volunteers from across the community, and it doesn't seem to be just the usual suspects. This little slide shows some junk art activities that we've recently linked into some of our litter picks, and that's been fun, but it's also part of saying, putting across the message to people about how much single-use plastic ends up as rubbish. So that's one area of volunteers. The next slide shows our community fridge and larder, and we've got a lot of people who are very committed to avoiding food waste and feel very strongly about it. So our community fridge is a very important one for our volunteers. And we've got other volunteers who enjoy the nature connection through the wildlife group and the pond and so on. The other point I wanted to make, as well as all those links with our volunteers, is that it's been really important for us to work constructively with our parish council. They have been very supportive in a number of ways, but partly financially. They give us grants for specific projects. They pay the rental on that container for our community fridge. They contributed towards our climate action notice board, which I have a slide for. And we're very proud of that. And we do try to ensure that all our projects are positive for the community, and as well as making these links between people, we're also improving the environment in various ways. And I'll just really quickly flash through some of those ways of improving the environment. So we have our litter picking regularly. We have some wooden planters in our village square that volunteers clad some particularly horrendous concrete planters with wood and made it look absolutely beautiful. We have the wildlife pond that I've mentioned already, and we have weekly sessions there. And a team refurbished the bus shelter for the parish some time ago. I guess the other really important thing, just to finish on, is the support that we've had from CAG Devon. And I'm not going to run through all the things that they have supported us with, because Helen's done a really good job of explaining their activities. But it is a really important point for me to end on, that we do feel very much part of this network, and it has benefited us enormously, both the way that CAG Devon links us up with other groups, the support that they're able to give. But it also is part of feeling a sense of maybe together, as that Rob Hopkins quote showed, together we can do things. Our ripples in our tiny pond meet the ripples being made in the pond of the next CAG group, and those ripples are meeting the next lot of ripples, and together we are, I think, making waves. And that for us is a really important part of being part of this network. I'll finish there and thank you. I'm sorry I probably run over just a tad.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Jenny. We will now switch over to a local authority perspective, and I am going to be bringing on Bobby Hughes, the Senior Waste Management Officer for Devon County Council. Thanks for joining us, Bobby. All yours.
Thank you, Ben. And thank you, Jenny. I just really loved that picture you created of all those ripples and waves. That was really lovely. Thank you. Next slide, Ben. Right, so I am part of the waste management team at Devon County Council. So these are just a few pictures to give you an idea of my world of work. Devon County Council is a high-performing local authority. We're the second highest county in terms of recycling performance in England. It's with a recycling rate of 54.5%, but we're trying to reach 65% by 2035, and that's a big stretch to get to that, actually. We've got well-established recycling facilities across the county, but we know people are still putting the wrong thing in the wrong bin, and we also know that we need to move them beyond recycling. So can I have the next slide, please? So recycling is good, but we could definitely do better. And this is where CAG Devon really, and All Community Action really comes in to help us. They really help to support our long-term behavioural change work. So in terms of Devon, we're very committed to the behavioural change side of things. We have our Recycle Devon brand that is sort of a lot of campaign work through social media and other communication channels. We also have our schools work in schools, which doing all sorts of workshops, also with Resource Futures. But then we also have the strand of community action work that we've been building since 2016. And from small beginnings in 2016, we've really expanded this past sort of year or two with the help of some additional funding. But local authorities do need help from community action groups. Because actually shifting behaviour, the message actually is better from others within our community. Keep Britain Tidy created this sort of reimagined waste hierarchy, as we call it. So looking at the options of how to dispose of your waste or deal with your waste, the least thing we want to do is bin it. But recycling is really quite low in that. We're really trying to shift the behaviour to more reuse and repair and composting and sort of everything you can think of. And most importantly, having that buy less mindset. Devon County Council actually spends about £38 million on dealing with people's waste. That's a phenomenal amount of money. And the best way to reduce that is actually to have less waste in the first place. So we have got to get people up that behaviour change sort of hierarchy and that waste hierarchy. So community action groups are a really important part of that. So some of the benefits of our community action groups is that they are those trusted voices that I think Charlie mentioned earlier, very trusted voices in our communities. They help to amplify the local authority message. And then there's this important part around helping to address the value perception gap. If you haven't read up on that, do look at it from a social science perspective, go and do a bit of research. I don't have time to go into it now, but really briefly, it's about this sort of misperception that people have that other people don't care as much about the things that they do. But other people do care about the same things. And people need to see that others care. They need to see people taking action. And that's what that little diagram is down the right-hand side, really, is that importance. And the key bit is seeing people that they trust, so their friends and family. Unfortunately, local authorities aren't always the best sort of deliverer of a message, as much as I would like us to be. Actually, most people are influenced more strongly by their friends and family's actions, and when they see them take action, they're more likely to do that. And then if they feel supported and they feel part of something bigger, as Jenny was saying, feeling part of that bigger network is really important. And then they're influencing others by those actions, those ripples in that pond, and they can definitely inspire that change. I've seen it myself. I'm part of the Chudfix Repair Cafe in my spare time, and when we set up, we visited Ashburton Repair Cafe, and they helped us a lot. And then once we were set up, the Bobby Tracy Repair Cafe came to see us, and Newton Abbot Repair Cafe came to see us, and so you do really get that ripple effect. And then once those repair cafes and community fridges and lots of other projects are set up, then they actually really help to influence those actions of other people. So they might not be part of that community group, but they are then coming to use the services of those community groups and having conversations with those other volunteers. So within a repair cafe, we know that lots more people, we've got 37 repair cafes across Devon now, and that's grown so fast in the last few years. We've also got 34 fridges and community fridges and larders, again, grown really rapidly in the last few years. So more and more people are using these and they have access to them. So that is shifting behaviour up that waste hierarchy. Can I have the next slide, please? So just a few more of the benefits from having, from the local authority perspective, is that the quantitative data that Helen mentioned earlier on is really important to evidencing our work as a local authority. Actually getting funding is really key, trying to support community action work. That evidence, that resource CIT, as we call it, the Resource Community Impact Tool, really helped us back in 2016. Knowing that tool was there helped us to build a case to develop our CAG Devon work. And then building on that, we know the data doesn't show the whole picture. So when we did the storytelling project, that really helped to show the depth of the work, and really all those things that are very hard to quantify. So do please, as Helen said, go and read them, because they really are quite impactful, some of those. And that really helped us to secure further funding, particularly from public health and our environment department, to help us expand this work. The other one that I wanted to flag up was just ensuring good practice. From a local authority perspective, we want to make sure that our communities are safe. And actually, if we're there supporting those communities, we know that they are providing good quality services. So some of the training that Helen flagged up, we know that the community repair cafes are trained to do PAT testing. We know that they're trained in bike maintenance. We know that the community fridges are covered by food hygiene certificates and things, or they understand what they need to do around that. So that safety within our community is really important. Also, from a local authority perspective, we want to build those long-term trusted relationships with our communities, not just in environmental action, but all across what we do. And I think doing this helps to do that. And also, there is a voice now for the community, so much more from an environmental perspective. We've got a really good relationship building with our CAG Devon groups. And it makes the community action much more visible, because the stories within our community action groups is actually coming through our communications through our Recycle Devon, because we're sharing the fantastic work of the repair cafes, and organisations like Upham Green Team will share what they're doing and those lovely stories, and that really helps with our social media and getting that wider reach. And a really important point is this and this is a very local authority point, but it's this cross-departmental working, because this started as a project around waste, but actually it's much wider. Can I have the next slide, please? Oh, there you go. So Devon County Council has a really wide set of priorities. I mean, I just picked up our current priorities, very top line priorities. There's a huge amount underneath these, but just to flag up that responding to climate emergency is one of our top priorities. Being ambitious for children and young people, and supporting sustainable economic recovery, tackling poverty and inequality, and aiming to be net zero by carbon 2030. All of those things are supported by community action, by our community action groups. Because they're not just green projects, they really are place-based and people-focused. They bring people together and strengthen communities, making them much more resilient, increasing all those connections. It's fantastic. The skill sharing and the learning new skills, the potential to create local jobs and community businesses, and then also on top of that, helping tackle isolation and improve well-being. So as Helen mentioned, I was just going to touch on the 5 ways to well-being as my last point. Devon County Council's actually got a public health remit as well, and through public health we have these 5 ways to well-being, about being connected, being active, giving your time and other aspects, taking notice and keeping learning. And if you look at what community action groups do, they tick every box within those 5 ways to well-being, and that's been really instrumental to us getting further funding to help our CAG work to go beyond just being seen as green groups, because actually they're vital to all of our services that we do as a county council, and we're continuing to build on that work with our across departments at the moment. I think that was my last slide, actually. I'd just like to leave you thinking about the 5 ways to well-being and taking action yourself in local communities. I'll hand back to, I think, Charlie, possibly.
Yeah, I'll come back just for a moment, just to say, well, really, thank you, everybody. It's so like hearing obviously Jenny's perspective as well is so inspirational. And Upham Green Team is one of the first projects I visited when I first started here a few years ago, and it's amazing to see that it happens in the car park of the doctor's surgery, their community fridge, and we heard from a lot of their volunteers, and yeah, it's just a super inspirational project, so it's really good to hear. So I won't dwell on this. We'll send this afterwards. This is just kind of some of the steps that you might want to take if you wanted to set up your own network. And really, it's that kind of defining the aims, maybe completing that outreach and research, and then, yeah, defining what impacts you might want to have and looking at fundraising. But I think we'll move on to, I know we're running a little short on time, but we will have a chance to answer some questions. So I'll hand over to Ben for the Q&A.
Yeah, great. I'm just going to add everyone back in, and then Charlie, if you want to close down the presentation, we'll be able to get everybody a little bit larger on screen. Wonderful. So I'll start with one that I've seen that Helen's already answered in the comments, but just for those those people who haven't tracked that. So this is from Juliet Evans for Helen. Can non-members who may be trying to set up similar groups or initiatives attend online events?
Hi. And my response was, if you haven't seen it, yes, usually. So if it's training around a specific event and we need to cap the numbers because it's a training session rather than more of an information giving session, then first dibs would go to our core members, and then later on we would be very happy to widen it out if there's still spare spaces. For other things, such as an introduction to libraries of things, where the numbers don't really matter, we would be very happy to have as broad an audience as possible. It helps introduce new potential members into the network. So yes, we're all for maximizing the benefit of any of the things that we put on, really.
Brilliant. So the next question comes from Ben Plummer. He asks, when funding is limited, what is the best way for councils to start dialogue with community groups to encourage climate action? And he says, especially where communication has been limited to date and there may be hesitancy to trust the council. So how can councils make the best use of limited funding to start dialogues with community groups? I guess Bobby and Charlie, you're probably best placed for this one.
Yeah, we've probably all got something to say on that. But yeah, so the main thing really is just to start reaching out and talking. So we've helped, you know, in Somerset, they didn't have a CAG, but they had a waste officer who was just tasked with doing that kind of work. So actually tapping into what local Facebook groups are out there, doing Googling, finding out what repair cafes are happening, there'll be something happening already locally. And then I think it's about working with and through partners. So finding a listening ear, finding somebody that is engaged, and then through them building the links within different communities. So yeah, finding your champions, I suppose, within the local authority, people who are kind of up for this type of work, but then also the champions in the community who are going to help you to reach into those different communities. But really, even with a small amount of resource, you can start a mapping exercise. Some of it will be desk-based initially. What is going on? Using Google, looking up. I mean, when we started in CAG Somerset, we were looking at, like, you know, local parish newsletters, whatever, doing a little bit of, you know, in detective work, really. But then to take it into the next stage, it will take a bit of time of going out there and going to some meetings. But it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time, because all you need to do is get those initial relationships happening. Once you've got someone engaged, it's like, oh, okay, actually, you might need to get over that barrier of, oh, it's a local authority. What might you want from us, and things like that. But once they understand that there's a huge amount of benefit, a huge amount of positives of working with the local authority, materials that they can provide. Recycle in Devon, there's a whole host of different materials that we can give to groups to go out and do events. Like, there's a lot of potential benefit from groups engaging. So yeah, I think it's just starting it, finding your champions, and then just being clear what the kind of offer is, and from that things will spiral and snowball.
So I just add to that as well, just to say also, I think being personally committed and actually just showing up at events and getting to know people and building those very personal connections, it's actually really important, I think. And as you build those relationships, they become more trusted. And as Charlie said, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. Through social media, it's very easy to share a post about an event that you know is going on, because you're just connected and you know what's happening. So I think taking that time, which we mentioned right back at the beginning, is so important to helping build those relationships, and recognizing it's a long-term thing. Groups have to work at their own time because they're all volunteers, but recognizing it's part of a long-term picture to support these groups, even if it's just helping them with a bit of photocopying and promoting their events through social media. It will lead to better things if you keep building that relationship.
Great, we'll move on because we do want to try and get through a few more questions. So this next one is from Rachel Hibbard, asking, can Bobby talk a little bit about how the community fridges work, and were there any issues or challenges? I feel like community fridges is something that quite a few of us have experience with. So yeah, Bobby, do you want to kick us off for that one?
Okay, well, community fridges are an interesting one. The first one actually started in Chudley, where I live, actually, which was interesting. Through the commitment of an individual, just absolute commitment, and a lot of resources from Hubbub have been used over the years. We were lucky, actually, to get a 3-year lottery grant as well as a separate project called Food Rescue, which helped set up a further 10 fridges across Devon, and that was a whole separate project, but obviously links to CAG as well. But CAG itself has also created a guide, so that's been really helpful, showing, because community fridges are all very individual. They're not just a fridge. Some of them we find in Devon are really varied, actually. We've got one that's up the Tean Valley, as we call it, and there's like lots of little stations of sort of mini larders, as it were, dotted around in church doorsteps, and because they're a very rural community. So actually we created or CAG created this guide that showed the sort of variety of different models out there, because there is no one size fits all. So I think every fridge has had quite a unique journey, really, although with obviously they've had support from slightly different places as well. But yeah, we now have, I think I said 34 earlier, didn't I? Which is, I just checked that before this meeting, and I was really surprised just how many we've got now, which is fantastic. But there's a lot of resources out there, both through CAG and Hubbub, if you're interested in getting one up and running. And Helen, you might like to add a bit more to that.
I would, but we're out of time. So I've dropped the link to the community fridge guide, the CAG Devon one, in the response to Rachel's question. I mean, we could run a whole separate session on that, quite frankly, and we have done actually.
Yeah, and we will send that link out with some of the other links in an email tomorrow afterwards. Yeah, we are pretty much out of time. We'll just do one more question, which is from Ben Cornelius, who has joined us from Glasgow. Hi, Ben. He's asking, do you know if there is a communities lead up here that I could have a chat with? And in brackets saying, sorry for the very individual question.
So I'll just kind of come in on that. So I mean, Resource Futures is a national organisation. So we've got a team based in Scotland. So we've got projects, and I oversee projects. One that's in Manchester. We've got a repaint project that's national as well. So if you did want to have a conversation about like the CAG model, then it would just be a matter of reaching out to me, and we'll send those details afterwards, and we can have a chat, because I think we touched on this a little bit, but even if you don't have a huge amount of budget, what we want to do is see community action happening everywhere. And we've got tools and resources that we're happy to share. So there'll be different ways of getting things going, whether it's going to be looking at just getting initial kind of research or knowledge and building, or if it's actually getting to the level of fundraising. And just to touch on that, I mean, funding can come from different local authority departments, but if that's a challenge, there is external funding you can get for this kind of work. We do look for external funding, grant funding, trust funding, so it would depend on who your partners are locally. So yeah, we can certainly have a conversation and see what might suit your area, and that's something I'd be very happy to do. We can pull in Bobby or Helen or whoever into those types of conversations, because we really just want to see this happen everywhere, and we want that kind of ripple effect to start. So yeah, we're really happy to just kind of chat to anybody.
Wonderful. I'm afraid we're out of time, so apologies for running slightly over on that one. Thank you very much to everybody who's come along. The recording will be made available tomorrow, and we'll pass on a bunch of the links that we've shared today and a few others as well, so that people can find out more about CAG networks. Thanks to Bobby, to Jenny, to Helen, and to Charlie for joining us today. And hopefully we'll see some of you at our next webinar in February. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks all.